Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Historical Humans podcast. My name's Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-hosts, Colum Coleman and Aaron Gilpin. And today we are headed to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. It's the 1600s, and there are witches about. We must hunt them down. Like it's wabbit season.
Yes, here we are, everybody. Welcome to, this year's, Halloween type episode. It's the Salem Witch Trials.
Happy
Because,
Halloween! Oh, we should have dressed in costumes. This was a missed
yeah,
opportunity.
yes, it
Oh
is.
wait, I got like a cloak I could wear.
Too late. We are
Oh.
here on the Salem Witch Trials. Something that is terrifying. Not only because if you believe in spooky stuff, but also because of what actually happens. Dear God, this is a nightmare.
I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that they allowed ghosts to testify in court is honestly incredible.
Yeah.
I want to know the legal shenanigans, like jumping jacks, or they came up with to attempt that. Because the only thing I can think of is when the Witch of Eden summoned a spirit, and the spirit's like, "Why are you talking?" It was actively against like Christian doctrine.
Yeah.
Because these ghosts, they wanted to get them witches. Those witches were the reason they died.
Well, here's the key. We'll get into that and the spectral evidence and the, shall we say, major flaws of the colonial legal system at the time. Kind of in the back half, and at the very end, it will be very much laid out explicitly. But first, we've got to get us to a little bit of a when and where. So, like Justin mentioned, we are in what is the Massachusetts Bay Colony, in a place called Salem Village. This is now Danvers, Massachusetts. And the year
The
is...
city center's moved, right?
Well, there's actually two Salems in, what's it called? The Bay Colony. There's Salem Town, which is the port and the town and where all the money is. And then a little ways inland, there's this farming community called Salem Village. And it's Salem Village where the trouble starts.
Okay.
And it's a very annoying distinction. We do our best in the notes to try and keep it separate and keep it clear, but that is a very important distinction, is that there's Salem Village, which is now Danvers, and then there's Salem Town, which I believe is now where everyone goes, which is now actually the town of Salem on the Massachusetts Bay.
Which is still involved, and it's the burial site for quite a few of the people who were convicted, unfortunately. But we'll circle back to that. It's kind of cool, though, if you ever get the chance to go out there and visit. That whole area of Massachusetts is gorgeous, especially along the seacoast. You take a coastal highway from Boston right up.
Yeah. The people doing the killing come from Salem Town. The people getting killed come from Salem Village.
Oh.
Is about how this works. Very much a gross oversimplification, but we get into that again later. Lots of little tastes of later. This is a very timey-wimey, intertangled yarn ball of a topic.
Naturally.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So it is the late 17th century, and the trials themselves will take place from June of 1692 to May of 1693. But the tradition goes back much further. See, witch hunting has been a time-honored tradition of Europe since the 14th century.
Where there's a witch, there's a way.
Yep.
It's an early modern issue.
Yeah. But about the year 1330, it's kicked off, and it reaches its height during the late 16th to mid 17th century. So this is right after the golden age of witch hunts, is the Salem Witch Trials. This is the last big hurrah of we're going to attack women in this manner.
Yeah, because that's my running theme. We'll talk about the causes and everything,
Yeah.
but my general assumption is the fact that women.
Yeah, yeah. They go all the way to the what was it? The late 18th century. And does anyone want to guess what country is the last country to execute a witch?
Brazil.
Oh, was it like Poland?
No, it's neither of those. It's not one you think of. It's Switzerland.
God damn it, Switzerland!
Sw-
We thought you were peaceful. We got rid of the witches.
Switzerland gets the last to kill. Spain and America get known for it, as do England, but it's Switzerland that gets the final word.
Wasn't it under England? It was King James the First with his like Malcolm.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, they do publish books on how to hunt witches. The English, they
The
turn
Hammer.
into
It's
literary
like
art.
the title's basically like the Hammer of Witches.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird things like that. Now, the purpose of these witch hunts, surprisingly, is not to punish someone or catch a criminal, but to uncover whether or not there are witches present in the community. There doesn't have to be proof of witchcraft prior to starting a witch hunt. You just have to ask the question, are there witches here? And then you get to do whatever the hell you want, trying to ferret them out.
Which, I know it's set in a different time period, but I very much always think back to the Monty Python scene of, she's a witch, Bono, she's a witch. No, we need to see tests.
Yep. Yes. The Holy Grail witch trial. Yeah, that is quite restrained. Like the witch says at the end of that, that's a fairer shake than I thought I would have got. Yes, that is surprisingly has a lot. She has a lot more defense in that than these women will during the Salem Witch Trials. But yeah, now witches, as per the definition that our wonderful friends here in 17th century Salem are going to be going by, are people who have sold their souls to Satan in exchange for his assistance. What that assistance is, no one knows. I don't think anyone has ever bothered to ask. And in return for their souls, as part of his assistance, they are believed to have a number of magical powers, including, and this list will get ridiculous quite quickly, shape-shifting, control and possession of beasts, limited flight, command of demons,
Nice.
and sex.
Ooh, we love a good sexually promiscuous witch.
That's right. If a woman can sleep with you, she has sold her soul to the devil and is a witch. That is the logic these people are using.
I love it, and I need 14 more of them.
Yeah.
I need 14 more
I
of them.
assume they mean like somebody sleeping around, right?
Yeah.
This is Puritan, Massachusetts Bay Colony. They're very, how do you say conservative?
Yeah. That's putting it mildly. This comes from a period in which it was believed unnatural for women to have things like a sex drive or a desire for human contact or, I don't know, a brain.
You could just hear the boomer comments and
Yeah. So you see what we're working with here. It's not a good system. And these witch hunts, these trials, these things, they're going to follow a set pattern, which is going to be rumors and suspicion lead to accusation, which leads to conviction, which in turn leads to execution. Now, there is an option for someone to confess between conviction and execution. It does not stop the execution, but you do have the right to confess.
Which there is such a thing as false confessions under duress.
Oh, yeah. That will, in fact, be what kicks off these trials into full swing. We're going to meet a wonderful woman by the name of Tituba later on. She is a slave, and her master is the, shall we say, town preacher man. And so you can imagine the pressure she's under to confess.
Just confess, it'll look better on our family. Think about what we've done for you. I could just imagine the guilt trip that went along with it.
Oh yes, the guilt trip. Delivered, presumably, by two fists. Keep in mind, she is property. But we'll get to her tragedy later. We've got to introduce the rest of our cast first for this wonderful, horrible nightmare of a story. So, at the late 17th century here in Salem, Salem Village, the small town just a little ways inland from Salem town out in the bay, it's currently undergoing a power struggle. You see, like in Romeo and Juliet, there are two powerful families that vie for control over this small village of 500 people.
Oh, god damn it. Right.
Yep.
It's all property.
Family.
It's all about property.
Yep.
Always has been.
Right,
Yep.
yeah. I forgot about that.
Yep. Family number one are the Porters. These are a wealthy family with strong connections to the merchants in Salem town. And on the other side of the arena is the Putnams, which are independent-minded, we don't need nothing from nobody, sort of crop sharer farmer coalition. There is constant lawsuits between people on the Putnam faction and people on the Porter faction. And we'll see in a little bit just which one of these groups is going to be the bad guys for our witch hunt. Fun fact, it's not the one you think. So we have a very open-ended question of what is a witch and what is a witch hunt. And we have a very divided, very litigious, very lawsuit-filled town. Dear God, I can't speak.
Litigious.
Ah, yes, yes.
Liturgy?
Like lawsuits everywhere.
Yeah.
We're gonna enter in our first chief character / villain is Samuel Harris. Harris here is a merchant man turned preacher. He is brought in at the behest of the Putnam family and made pastor of the village's Congregational Church in 1689. He brings with him his wife, 3 children, his niece, and 2 slaves. About half of them will be introduced later to feature very prominently in What Goes Wrong. As soon as he arrives, he starts causing waves.
Oh no.
Number 1, he is one of the most well-paid preachers this town has ever had. And as soon as he walks
in, being paid,
it's Protestantism. They don't collect tithes and get funded from a centralized church. Instead, the town keeps them on the payroll, the same as you might a councilman or a governor. Yeah. He demands, before he will even preach, a raise and ownership of the church. He wants to own the land that specifically the parsonage is built on. Now, the parsonage is the house attached to the church that the clergy live in, He says that's not church property. That's not town property. That is my personal property. Town don't like this, but they fold. Additionally, he will preach an orthodox Puritan theology to a split congregation. Despite having only 500 people, Salem Village is relatively diverse for a British colony in the Americas. There are multiple denominations of Christianity here.
I think a lot of that, thankfully, has to do with the fact that Salem was a port city, and it was port city along the route to Boston, so it got some of the benefits of that metropolitanism.
Yep. Now, Puritan preacher man here, Mr. Paris, hates that. So much so that he demands all people who are not members of the congregational denomination be removed from church property before communion. This really divides Salem into pro and anti-Paris factions. You know, to go along with the pro and anti, Putnam and was the other family Porter factions. He makes sure the divide isn't just economic, it's religious.
Ooh.
Yep. This man is arguably the worst thing that ever happened to Salem. Because not only does he do this, but would you like to guess who the 3 people that kick off the witch hunt are?
Probably his kids.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Because remember, he arrives with 4 children. 3 that are his own, and 1 that is his niece. And in 1692, 3 years after they moved to this town, 3 children begin experiencing really odd behavior. They start acting weird, and no one knows why. The first is Betty Paris, age 9, daughter of Samuel Paris. The second is, if you read the Crucible, the ringleader of this whole thing, but that's not really proven, Abigail Williams, age 11, niece of Samuel Paris. And finally, Anne Putnam Jr. She is age 12, and she is the friend to Abigail and Betty. She's their friend. Now, this right here should already tell you what side the witch hunt is going to be on in the village. It's going to be the fundamentalists, Congregationalists, and the Putnams against everyone else. And people are going to suffer big time.
Those poor girls.
It's usually how it goes, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, the first thing that they begin doing that is seen as mystical and weird is they begin practice fortune telling.
You mean 3 somewhat young kids? Maybe they were playing a game.
Nope, they are seeing the future. And you know who's to blame? The household slaves.
Ah.
Ooh.
They're Haitian, after all.
With the hoodoo and voodoo.
Yep. Then the girls begin having fits. They start screaming randomly. They throw things. They contort their bodies, make odd noises. They complain about bitter sensations on their skin, biting, itching, cold. You know, in Massachusetts, they're cold.
Impossible.
And just my favorite part of researching this whole thing was finding the fact that, number 1, we don't know what caused this. And number 2, all the different answers historians have tried to give for it.
Yeah.
My personal favorite is the one from the 70s that says they're just juvenile delinquents.
Those kids, they're delinquents. I mean, they were kids being kids, more than likely. Let's be real here.
Yep.
I think they were probably just being kids playing a silly game and parents took it too serious. But I very much do think that they were victims of child abuse. I think that mental stress, especially colonial living, it was not easy. It was not a pleasant experience.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. Child abuse is strongly up there, just given the fact of what little we know about Mr. Paris and the general way in which he conducted himself was very fire and brimstone, damnation or God kind of man. It's either sainthood or sin. There's no in between with this man. Some of the other contributing factors or causes is it's believed that the girls may have been suffering from Lyme disease or even epilepsy.
I mean, Lyme's disease, they're in colonial Massachusetts, ticks.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah, it's possible. Epilepsy. There would not have been a cure for it. There would not have been general understanding of it. They're out here in the sticks in a 500-person village 10 miles from the coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other explanation was rather interesting. It's something called ergotism, which is caused by infected bread.
Oh, right.
And it's caused by something called ergot, which is the active ingredient in LSD.
It was made by scientists.
Yep. Yeah. So they could have literally just been tripping on bad bread. You know,
I mean, we've seen what bread can do when it's, fermenting.
Yeah. Yeah. This is literally a don't eat the mushrooms kind of situation here. It could be anything because the local doctor, William Griggs, he can't identify a medical cause.
Yeah, but doctors back then were the people who were able to afford the stethoscopes.
Yeah.
It didn't take much of a medical degree. It took a very basic knowledge of miasma and the different humors is what they call them, the 7 humors of the body.
Yeah, but don't you worry.
I might be wrong on that.
Yeah, who knows? But don't you worry about Dr. Griggs here, his qualifications, because you see, turns out he could read. And there was a book published in 1689 about a famous 1680 case of witchcraft that occurred in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, no.
And the girl's symptoms match.
She's a witch.
Plain as day.
She's
a witch. Yep. May as well have been writ there by the hand of the Lord. I'm being sarcastic.
God.
Now, the solution to this is absolutely hilarious, and it's what really marks the downfall here for our 4th player in this game, Tituba. Tituba being the Haitian household slave of Mr. Paris. See, no one can figure out what's going on, so it comes to the suggestion that we should have Tituba bake a magic witch cake that will identify the cause of the girl's symptoms. It does nothing, but it enrages Samuel Paris, who sees this as a sign of blasphemy throughout the entire community.
God damn.
Yikes.
It enrages him so much that not long after, probably fearing for their own physical safety, Abigail and Betty start naming people as their tormentors. And they pick 3 people.
Oh no.
Because Paris is insisting that they know who's doing this, and they must tell him who these wicked souls are. Number 1, Tituba, the Haitian slave. Number 2, Sarah Good, a crotchety woman who lives on the street as a beggar. Safe target. No one's defending her.
The homeless person, basically.
Yep. Yeah, the local homeless population. And number 3, Sarah Osborne, an elderly, bedridden woman who has been shunned by Salem society for years because she had, shall we say, romantic interest in one of her servants.
It's okay if the man does it, but the second a woman does, it's a problem.
I don't even think she was married when it happened.
Oh my god.
So it's not even cheating.
So they took the 3 easiest targets in town. Yikes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, to be fair, I could also very much see kids blaming it and just throwing names out there if they knew it would get them out of trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, assuming it wasn't, again, the father's ploy the entire time to do these things.
Yeah. Well, it's not really, it doesn't really seem to be a ploy by the preacher there, by Sam Paris, just because these 3 women, you gain nothing by destroying them. One is literally his own property. Another is a homeless person. And the third is a geriatric old woman who can't leave her home. These are not forces to be reckoned with. These are not threats to anyone.
No, but maybe if he was testing it out, making sure he could get away with something like this. But that it might be a bit far-fetched, yeah.
Yeah. It's really, there's a lot of stuff that's just really unclear when it comes to this. And unfortunately for everyone involved, this draws attention from Salem town, which sends 2 men to investigate, a pair of magistrates. They go out on March 1st, 1692. They head into Salem Village. Their names are John Hawthorne and Jonathan Corwin. And they begin a very informal and somewhat extra-legal interrogation of both the children and the women accused of witchcraft, which mostly consists of following them around town, into their homes, and wherever they go, badgering them with, "Why are you evil? Why'd you do it?"
You're a witch!
Day and night. Now, the only reprieve these 6 people have is the fact that they outnumber the magistrates 3-1, so they can't be everywhere at once. But it gets bad. And although all 3 women protest that they are innocent, Tituba eventually issues what is ultimately a false confession.
A confession under duress. It's a real thing.
She is being harassed by magistrates. Her master, Samuel Paris, not a particularly nice guy, is also pressuring her and threatening her. And keep in mind, she has no rights whatsoever.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, women probably definitely didn't have rights in this time period.
Well, she was also a slave, Aaron.
Yeah. That's she
it.
is. Yeah, she is the preacher man's slave, and the preacher man is currently the driving force behind these investigations.
This witch hunt of sorts.
Yep. This witch hunt. So, theoretically, he can hurt her any way he chooses if he thinks she is withholding information from him. And it's generally believed that she feels vulnerable, she feels afraid, and that she tells the magistrates what they want to hear. Except she makes one key mistake with closing the book on this. Because in her confession, she admits to making a deal with the devil and signing her name in the devil's book. And she admits to seeing Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne's signatures in said book. And she says there's 7 other signatures that she could not read also in that book.
Yikes.
Because by God, if I'm burning, I'm taking this town with me.
Also, that does imply that she was literate, which I don't know if that's a plot hole or if that's just overlooked.
I do not know whether or not Tituba was literate. I know that she was from Haiti, and so little is known about her that there is a debate as to whether she was indigenous Haitian or African in ethnicity.
I think it's I don't think it's a far stretch to say that she probably would have been illiterate. So the fact that she made a false confession and said she saw other names.
Yep.
Yikes.
Yeah. Now, what this is taken as is proof of guilt for Tituba, Good, and Osborne, and as empirical proof that there are more witches hiding in Salem Village, potentially threatening the good villagers. This is confirmed in the minds of the magistrates and the investigators when the strange symptoms experienced by the 3 children begin to spread to other women of the town or of the village. This leads to more accusations of witchcraft. And these accusations no longer target the poor or the downtrodden or the enslaved, but people with property, disputed property, which is can't-owned property.
Yikes.
And if there's debate as to whether you own the land or me, well, you're a witch. End of discussion.
And, like, to say these were kangaroo courts, I think give a very big injustice to the kangaroos who have studied law.
Oh, no. We haven't gotten to the kangaroo court. Keep in mind, this is informal, extra-legal inquiries. The kangaroo court is coming.
Oh no, it's the Puritan Inquisition.
Yep. These are just people endowed with some small amount of power by the town or the colony to enact justice, running through the streets, more or less saying, someone has accused you of being a witch. Do you confess? And if you say no, you're arrested and killed. If you say yes, you're arrested but not killed.
Just killed at a later date.
Yep. Now, the accused are typically enemies of the Putnam family, and the accusers, i.e. the people suffering from these symptoms, are usually friends of the Putnams. I can see no motivation here beyond simple devotion to the Lord thy God.
This is just effectively what I'd imagine what would happen if HOAs had religious power on top of their HOA power. Like, all right, Johnson family, you guys didn't cut your grass for the 3rd week in a row. I think you might be a witch.
I mean, the closest you probably got is with the what was it? I think they were called blood purity clauses in suburbs to keep to make neighborhoods all white.
Yikes.
That's a terrifying thing I've not looked into. Welcome to True Horror Stories here on Historical Humans.
So yeah, he was just going on a personal crusade then. Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, eventually, this draws the attention of the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And he's going to do some things. Oh, God, he's going to do some things. The first thing he does is Governor Phipps here orders a court of oyer and terminer in Salem town. Now, this is basically a court of hearing and judgment. It's a provisional thing that they could do way, way back in the day when they didn't have courthouses everywhere. You would gather the people needed for a court trial in the town, and you would convene this court, and this court would have the governor's authority to enact the state law or the colony law. And there was absolutely no regulation on the conduct of the court, provided you kept the sitting governor from objecting to it.
Basically, you follow the rules just enough that he doesn't raise an eye at what you're doing. Yep. Which eventually does happen and leads to a fairly comical interaction. But I don't think we quite get there.
Yeah, no, let's just keep going with what this court is made up of, because dear God.
Consisted of 7 judges in total, and those who were accused, they were forced to represent themselves and defend themselves without counsel because there wasn't a right to a fair trial.
Yep. Now, this court convenes in May of 1692. It's led by the lieutenant governor, a man named William Stoughton.
Oh, Stoughton.
He proves himself to, not, at the very least, not be a good man.
Well, one of the things he did, and I mentioned it briefly earlier, was he allowed spectral evidence to be used, which were claims by the victims to have seen specters in the form of the accused torment them. And it was taken as the same validity and the same value as any eyewitness account to any other crime. And the accusers stood in the gallery during the trials, writhing as proof of the specters. So you go and, like, writhe and pretend like you're being impacted, and boom, done.
Yeah. Yeah, you just...
How is that not witchcraft, though?
Well, it's proof of the witchcraft. You're absolutely right. It is witchcraft. Because, you see, when you enter my presence, I am beset by the horrible specters of the demons that you conjure and keep with you. They're attacking me. They're besetting me. They're besetting me. See, I couldn't just flail my body around for no reason like that. That's not humanly possible. Clearly, your witchcraftiness is attacking me at this very moment.
And I imagine the lieutenant governor sitting there like, damn, that's a good argument.
Yep. Yeah, you're really not allowed to do a lot of things. You're not allowed legal counsel, like Justin said. You're not allowed to question the witnesses. There's no cross-examination. You're just accused. The evidence is presented against you, and you are allowed to plead guilty or not guilty.
And the interesting thing with that is if you pled guilty, they would not execute you. But if you pled innocent, they would execute you. Because if you pled guilty and you're a confessed witch, then only God can punish you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The one fun thing is you need to provide proof of your repentance. So you must name another person whose name you saw in that book.
You know, I think Susie down the block, I'm pretty sure she was in that book.
Yeah.
I just pointed the person in front of me.
Now, this actually becomes very funny later on when Sarah Good gets put on trial. She's gonna play a little trick with these rules.
Oh no.
Remember, if you confess to being guilty, you have to name someone else. Would anyone like to guess who she names?
The wife of the person in charge.
She names Stoughton himself.
Oh! But I'm guessing he didn't go on trial.
Her confession is rejected and she is killed.
You know, that confession, that's the one that we don't trust. Throw it out.
Yeah.
She's clever, but apparently not too much.
No, she played the only card she had.
And the shitty thing too that a lot of the things that we don't talk about is if you contested the trial, it was basically effectively evidence of you consorting with the witches. So it's pretty much like the Red Scare in the U.S. It's like, well, if you're not actively going after them, you must be with them.
Yep. That is exactly what it is. That's why during the Red Scare, Arthur Miller, an American playwright, writes The Crucible, a play about the Salem Witch Trials, and the whole thing is a parable for McCarthy and the Red Scare. Basically, his way of saying, does no one see what we're doing here? Does no one get what's happening?
He's a communist.
Yep.
And a witch. Oh, we need to have the third trials. The witch and communist.
We do not need to complete the trilogy, Justin.
How else am I gonna find my next ex-wife?
Besides, we waited, 300 years between the first one and the sequel? We can wait.
Oh no, I don't got time for that.
This isn't like when Disney bought Star Wars and suddenly there was a movie every 2 years.
That's just it. We need to get bought out by Disney. That is the way. Oh boy. I can't even do the Mickey voice. Anyways.
Yep.
Continuing on.
Yep. The court works pretty fast, and within a month, they've got their first conviction on June 2nd. They convict a woman named Bridget Bishop, and they hang her on the 10th.
Damn.
However, as you know, we got to get the ball rolling. Momentum's a thing. So, for the next month, how many people do you think they convict?
Oh, well, they started with one. I'm assuming they do 5 more right away.
Yep.
I'm gonna say, just 5.
Yep, just 5.
And it's exponential. Then the next month they're gonna do like 10. The one after they do 15.
Yep. July 19th, 5 more people are hung, including Sarah Good, whose response to being found guilty was to say, "Well, in that case, you're a witch." I believe her exact quote is, "I am no more witch than you are wizard." And you have pronounced me guilty of witchcraft.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so we got one more. We got next month, August. We've just done 5 for July. How many are August? How many are August?
I'm going with 10. I think it's 10.
Closer to 15.
5 again.
Oh.
They plateau a little bit there, Court's got to, court's got a court. They plateau a little bit, some moderation. August 19th, they hang 5 more convicted persons, including, and this is a fun fact, a man.
A man?
Yep. George Burroughs, the priest of Salem Village from 1680 to 1683.
So he killed his rival.
He killed his predecessor, and the best part is, Burroughs was retired and living in Maine. And he is brought from his home in Maine to Salem Village and hung for witchcraft.
Oh my God. So he came in, he goes, "This town has issues. You're being plagued by witches. It was the last holy man who was the head of the witches."
Yep. Yeah, he's accused of being the ringleader.
Wait, I forgot that Maine didn't become separated from Massachusetts until like later.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things going on with colonial geography in the Bay Colony, but effectively, he gets brought down from Maine to test, to be killed.
To stand trial for the crimes he's committed against the motherland.
Now, one of the funny things is this was actually the dumbest thing the little witch trial here, this little court could have done. Because there's one rule of witches, that every good Puritan knows. No witch can recite a prayer perfectly. And so when Burroughs gets up onto the gallows, he just starts reciting the Lord's Prayer over and over again.
Ooh.
And he is flawless every single time.
Yikes.
And that kind of lays the groundwork for maybe this is just hysteria.
Like, maybe?
Yeah. Anyway, they kill him before he can keep repeating it. Can't let that happen.
It's just a very cleverly disguised witch. This one did learn it. It goes against science, but still a witch.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Keep going.
When the frenzied crowd expects blood, you must feed them blood.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Caligula. God, it's it's terrible. All right. Next up, we're gonna hit September. This is unbeknownst to the court. This is gonna be the last month that the court of Oyer and Terminer exists. How many witches do you think they hang in September?
I'm gonna go with
Just
10
September?
again. Yeah.
Yep.
Fuck it. Closer to 20.
The answer is 8.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know.
I really thought these people were bloodthirsty.
But they got more
Well,
efficient at least.
They're bloodthirsty, but remember, they have a population of 500, and they've already had to bring in people from other towns to kill them.
Oh my god, when the witch hunt is so successful, you need to import new victims.
We had to import more witches.
Yikes.
That's what starts happening in September. Accusations start including people who have never been in Salem Village.
Oh god.
And what's interesting about the September hangings is there's actually a couples hanging. It's it's like a Valentine's Day event.
Well,
Because you
that's
see
good.
because you see they hang this elderly woman named Martha Corey. And while they're doing that, they crush to death her husband Giles.
Oh yeah, he's the one who gets
Giles.
pressed.
Yep. Giles Corey refuses to enter a plea when accused of witchcraft. Because, fun fact, this trial can't go forward if you don't utter a plea. He just doesn't speak.
He pled the fifth before the fifth became the fifth.
So, in response, they tie this man to the ground and start stacking boulders on him, screaming, "Confess, confess," until he is crushed to death by the weight of the boulders.
Oh,
It took
brutal.
him 2 days to die.
I like that it took all of this before people outside, within the colony, but outside the area, started going, hey, this is a little fucked up. You guys are kind of taking this a little too far. And it got to a point where even the governor had to intervene. And he intervened because his wife had been accused. And he had to basically stop the court and send a letter to the lieutenant governor saying, hey, please stop executing so many people.
Yep. Yeah, one of the other fun objections, in addition to the governor, is, I believe, Samuel Parris's own father, the minister and president of Harvard, says that spectral evidence is made up. What are you doing? Stop this.
Of course.
And the new court, the Superior Court of Judicature, basically said that it would not allow the spectral evidence, which,
Yeah.
one small benefit. They got their shit together a little bit.
Yep. Trials resume in January of 1693 under this new court, and it turns out it's a lot harder to to convict someone of witchcraft when you can't just have the accuser say they did it and then kill them.
You mean you need to present evidence? I need to speak with the prosecution.
Yep.
They can do that?
Yep. It's bad.
It's real bad.
56 people are put on trial in the Superior Court of the Judicator. 3 are convicted. 5 more are allowed to perish in the custody of the court.
I mean, that saying they were allowed to perish in the court. The courts had really nasty jails, very poor hygiene standards. Like, death and disease inside of those prisons were fairly common.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm putting it very nicely that they just sort of let them die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like make no mistake, this was state-sponsored neglect.
Oh, yeah. And
Which is also still pretty much a problem in our country today too, believe it or not.
yeah, except one small positive side is in May of 1693, Governor Phipps decided to dissolve the court and pardon everyone who had been on trial. So, kind of put an end to the kangaroo courts, but oh my God, there was bloodshed. There were 33 people who were convicted, 19 of them were hanged, 5 died in prison, and 1 was crushed to death. That is a brutal, brutal death count. I mean, that's 25 people of 33 convicted.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's really bad. Like these whole witch trials, like we didn't really go into like the hysteria or the individual cases of all these people who are convicted and the back and forth of are these people faking, are they not? It's really clear that at least from the perspective of the research I was able to gather, this was a combination of hysteria and economic exploitation.
It was just advantageous exploitation on behalf of Paris. I mean, he saw an opportunity and he took it.
Yeah, yeah. Regardless of what was going on with those children originally, the Putnam family and Minister Paris saw a chance to make their enemies disappear, and they took it.
And yeah, it left a lot of lasting legacy and impact because just a few years later, in 1697, the General Court of Massachusetts declared a day of fasting for the tragedy of the trials. I mean, the fact that he pardoned everyone right away tells me that he saw how inconsistent and how poorly ran, organized run. Yeah. And it's interesting because then just a few short years after that, in 1711, 22 of the 33 were exonerated by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So they started pretty much wiping the record. I mean, you can't bring them back from the dead, but at least they're not criminals anymore. Yeah. And then only took a few hundred more years after that, in 1957, the state of Massachusetts formally apologized for the trials. I don't quite know who they were apologizing to, but at least we know what they were apologizing for.
Yeah.
And then in 2001, because every few years you got to bring it back into relevancy, they finally exonerated the final 11 victims of the trials. And there were some small positives that actually did come of this, besides the people who unfortunately lost their lives. But we mentioned it briefly earlier. It's part of the reason why we have the right to counsel. It's why we have the right to cross-examine an accuser. And it's why we have the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Because...
But remember, kids, never talk to cops
without
a lawyer present.
Yeah. That's just good advice to begin with.
Yeah, and the big reason for these three changes being tied to the witch trials, because the witch trials operated along the lines of you stand alone, you are accused, you may not speak to your accuser or question them, and once you stand accused, it is assumed that whatever you are accused of, you did. You're assumed guilty. And if you're not allowed to say anything in your defense, if you're not allowed legal defense, if you're not allowed to question the story laid out of what you did, you can't prove yourself innocent.
And let's not talk about the fact that they actively executed people who proclaim their innocence.
Yeah.
Like that's straight up just bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's a lot here where it's just like you can't prove yourself innocent. You physically cannot under the circumstances of the witch trials. And it's because these very fundamental things, the three we've listed out here, they didn't exist as legal precedents or standards for the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They come into existence years afterwards, in part as a result of just how wrong justice can go without them.
It's a very interesting story, and it's one of the fundamental ones that really laid out how early America was shaped by religious extremists. And it makes a lot of sense in a modern context, in a modern lens, when you see how these were some of the origins, how the Quakers were some of the origins. A lot of fringe religious groups that got exiled from Europe came and found a home in America, and it was so far removed from everyone else that they kind of had free reign. I mean, the whole time that the trials were going on, the Governor Phipps, he was up in the Maine territory fighting territorial battles. He was trying to defend the land because they were having a bunch of native raiders coming through and attacking.
So basically, this was just a prelude to what ends up actually happening in America with a lot of.
I mean, can we just
Cults.
talk about the fact that he was out of office effectively? The lieutenant governor had stood up in his stead and had run this kangaroo court and had fucked up so royally.
Yep.
And actually, you don't talk about it here, but because of the trials, and this is a continuation, he actually gets recalled back to London and eventually dies in London. So Stoughton, I believe, becomes the next governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony.
Yeah, that might be what happened. I didn't look into what happens with Phipps after he dissolves the court in 1693, because that is effectively when his relevance to the witch trials ends. He is not the man who exonerates them in 97. I do not believe that is him.
That by that point he got recalled back to England, but it caused such an uproar back in London because this was high society. I mean, it was appalling to hear about what happened in the colony. And if
These
you guys,
savages.
yeah, if you guys ever get the chance, I highly recommend visiting Salem, Massachusetts, because they do
It's also important to know real quick. Puritans really were not liked in England, so much so they got kicked out of England, and then the Netherlands kicked them out.
Well, no, I mean, there's no wonder this angered the English sensibilities back home. Everyone knows you burn a witch. Europeans burn witches, and these people are hanging them?
Yeah,
They're dignified.
The colonials, they just don't do things right. But highly recommend going to visit Salem. I just would avoid it in October because it's very touristy, but it's very cool. You can see a lot of the sites of the locations of the witch trials, including where some of them were hanged. You can see the grave sites where Bridget Good or Sarah Good.
Yeah, Sarah Good, Bridget Bishop,
Sarah,
yeah,
and Sarah Osborne.
Yeah.
You can see where they're buried. It's very cool. There's a little monument there, a couple of houses. Like, it is truly walking through history going back there. And yeah, it harkens back to a different era, and I could not imagine how isolating being a colony like that was, because it was months before you heard something from anyone. It was weeks travel to get to the nearest colony of people. I mean, it took a couple of days travel to get to Boston. Well, maybe not a couple of days, maybe a day, day and a half, but it's a hike. And Boston back then wasn't pretty well developed like it is today.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Also, not to mention, there's the attitude of the Massachusetts Bay Colony being an extremely conservative area during this time period. There's a reason why there's the phrase banned in Boston that gets associated with books. And that's because Boston would outright refuse to print or circulate certain forms of literature if it was deemed impure. And so you have
Jesus
that
Christ.
kind of prevailing attitude of we need to control what people think that goes on in this colony during this time.
But I think that's a good point for us to wrap up. I think we've kind of reached our end. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, let us know down below, and we'll see you in the next one.